the first words out of your mouth set the tone, and most people blow it. I mean, you can see that in stand-up comedy. I love stand-up comedy. You know, you don't want to be the hero. You want the customer to be the hero. Sure. You just want to be the guy. Money is an exchange of value. Mm-hmm. Most people would say money is an exchange of time because they're thinking, how much are you going to pay me per hour? Nothing wrong with making massive amounts of money as long as you give massive amounts of value.
How to become problem finders and problem solvers. Mm-hmm. Most salespeople are what? They're what I call product pushers. All right, welcome to the show, everybody. Closers are losers. Remember, it's not about closing in our day and age. It's about asking the right questions to get your prospects to persuade and close themselves. If you are still using techniques from the dinosaur ages of selling, and you're still using those manipulative techniques and you're trying to close, and chase, you are losing sales, my friend, that you could be making in our day and age. Now, today I've got a special guest with me that I've been wanting to interview for a long time that's going to talk a lot about this. This gentleman, I'm going to introduce you to him right now, studied at the University of Oregon College of Business Administration. He worked as a sales rep with Janssen, is it called?
Jason
Sportswear for 4 years. He was fired after 2 corporate buyouts. We got to find out about that. And he joined world-renowned business leader, personal development trainer, and speaker, one of person I really admire, Tony Robbins in San Diego. This gentleman proved himself being a sales leader of the year twice with Tony and mastered telemarketing and group presentation skills. He also hired, trained, and led sales teams for Tony Robbins throughout the United States. And as Tony Robbins' international point man, he built the brand in Australia and the UK. After 6 years with Tony, he started his own brand, and he's been the energy source for over 1,000 events for companies and associations, including, but not limited to, Hyatt, Harley Davidson, Apple, State Farm, the Campbell Soup Company, love that soup, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Exxon, and GM. So with that, I want to introduce all of you to Mr. Chip Eichelberger. Chip. Is that a German last name? Where does that come from?
Yes, very German, very German. Eichelberger, they would say.
Oh, goodness gracious. I thought it was something like that. I always tell my mom always says that I'm from Arkansas, so we're bad at pronouncing names down there. You know what I mean? All right. So I wanted to start off by asking you some questions today.
Sure.
Really that I thought would help, especially right now. With the coronavirus going on, businesses kind of shutting down, salespeople wondering what to do, but would help them with their sales process and really, get them to the next level, even starting right now. And when we all know the economy is going to come back shortly, really what to do with that. So first of all, I want to ask you just some details about, I've got to find out about Tony. How did you get involved with Tony Robbins? I was just at one of his events he was speaking at maybe a month and a half ago.
Oh, great.
And what did you do for him specifically?
Yeah, he just had his 60th birthday. Unbelievable. I was there in the early days when, the intro used to be, he's accomplished more by the age of 30, and just turned 60. Fantastic. I had gravitated. I was with a mainstream sportswear manufacturer called Janssen, and that was going to be my dream job, and was there for 4 years, had a couple promotions, and they got bought out twice and whacked the sales force in half and gravitated down to San Diego and bounced around and, found a classified ad in the newspaper. For the young people out there used to be no internet. It was called classified ads in what's called a newspaper. And it said, earn excellent income promoting a national celebrity. 5 people who want to make a difference. I thought that was interesting, and went to see Tony live for the first time. I think he was 27 years old and got in front of him, was like, holy cow. Right. Never seen anybody like that. I thought, what if I attached myself to him? And, week later, I'm off and running up to Seattle, Washington. And what we did basically at a one-day business seminar.
Okay.
Back then, Tom Hopkins, Brian Tracy, they would go out and do a one-day program. Jim Rohn, they would have road people. And so I started as one of the people on the team, then managed the teams. We would go out and telemarket, sales organizations, auto, real estate, linear copy or whatever, and
Sure.
do a 45-minute, 30-minute presentation. It was fun, engaging, but very persuasive,
Right.
getting them to invest in themselves to go to this one-day seminar. And gosh, I did that all over pretty much every major city in the country, went ahead of them to work with the promoters in Australia, went ahead of them to work with the promoter in the United Kingdom. And, you know, it was a 6-year run of massively working on myself and my skills to persuade.
Yeah.
Because as you know, there's a big difference between presentation and then elegantly leading people to take action and really persuading them.
Yeah. And one thing I found, you know, is that as I've seen Tony, because I've been at some of his events and I just watch him, certain questions he's asking. Because I know my background is behavioral science and human psychology. That's what I studied in university. So as a behavioral scientist, I can see certain questions that he's asking in the audience is getting them to basically psychologically persuade themselves that they want to change their situation. It's like the best psychologists in the world, right? They get paid, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars an hour for therapy, not because they tell people what to do, because we know when we tell people what to do in sales or anything, that goes in one ear out the other because it's your idea, not theirs. But because they ask certain questions and they know the tonality to ask those, and they know kind of the right place in that conversation to ask them to get that client to persuade themselves to solve their own problem. It's all about self-persuasion.
Right.
As I've seen Tony do that, it's marvelous. It's just like a wonder watching it just happen in front of thousands of people, not just even one-on-one. What do you think was the biggest thing you learned from Tony before you jumped in and started your own company and started doing some of the same things?
Well, interesting. I mean, there's a big difference. You know, I've watched some of your videos. You know, the old school was to tell versus asking. Yeah. It's a Socratic method of asking the right questions at the right time. I think most salespeople wing it. They think, you know, I've been doing this quite a while. I knew things pretty well. They don't prepare like they could. They're not doing their homework like they could. And they go in and, you know, talk way too much. So it's asking questions. That Socratic method, what Tony's brilliant at, if you read Unlimited Power's first book, I think it came out in '87, was talked about Milton Erickson and Ericksonian hypnosis and just asking those questions. And Tony's skill level from the front of the room is so far beyond what the average person understands what he's doing, you know? Sure. So modeling his, you know, because I learned some things from Tony just in terms of what I do. Yeah. And, you know, key belief systems that, you know, people would rather be entertained than educated. Sure. You know, it's got to be engaging. That's always been my secret sauce in terms of how I engage an audience and prepare and do a customized handout and get people involved. People want to be involved. They don't want the speaker up there talking, and everybody's sitting there listening. So that's one of the key things I've learned, and how to really engage an audience and entertain. Yeah. There's lots of people out there with good information.
Well, it's all about
across in an entertaining way. Go ahead.
100%. It's all, and I'm sure you know how to do this probably way better than I do, but it's all about gaining their attention. You know, because you speak and you do a lot on stage, right? You're entertaining on stage, not necessarily kind of like some of our audiences more one-on-one sales, right? But it applies the same way. Like when I do stage events and stuff, and I speak for, you know, I train different corporations that we have and stuff, and I come out and I don't say like most speakers, like, hey, how's it going? How's the weather? Love the town. Like that's boring. That's blah, blah, blah. Because
you got to hook them in the beginning, like fishing.
Exactly. Because I notice when speakers do that at events,
you want to shoot them,
that the audience just zones out. They get on their phone, they get on their computer, they leave. It's just like boring. So what do you do when you get on the stage is, you know, you have to, I think the biggest part of even being on stage is really being silent. Here's what I mean by that. This is the first time I ever did this. This was probably about 3 or 4 years ago. I was at an event in Aruba. And I came out on stage and I think I was watching The Wolf on Wall Street like the night before. I got this idea from it. I'm like, I'm going to try.
I've got a Jordan Belfort story later. We've spoken Australia together. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So what I did is I came out on stage and I just walked out into the middle of the platform. I didn't say a word. Okay. And this is like 5-7 seconds. And then I sat there and looked out at the audience. Still didn't say a word for another 3 or 4 seconds, then walked down the front steps of the audience into the audience and probably still 12 seconds later had not said a thing. And you know what that did? Everybody in the room, there's probably 1,000 people there. Everybody put their phones down, computers down. Everybody was completely zoned into what the hell is going on? And then I walked over to them. I didn't do the sell me the pin because that's the Jordan thing that I saw, but I did something different where I engaged with 3 or 4 of them people, 3 or 4 of the audience in the front row to kind of put them on the spot where there was some tension there. And I'm telling you, the whole 2 hours, everybody zoned in all the time. It's all about, in that initial conversation, getting them to really pay attention to what you're doing.
It's like that with even just a sales presentation. If a salesperson goes in and they got 3 people around a conference table, the first words out of your mouth set the tone, and most people blow it. I mean, you even see that in stand-up comedy. I love stand-up comedy. Very few comedians nail that first 5 seconds. They come out there and they blow it. Hey, good afternoon. Hey, everybody, great to see you. You know, it's just like you blew that opportunity. I remember when I was speaking, and like, you're probably like me, I saw you on stage. I mean, you get a little excited somehow, and sometimes you can get going too fast.
Yeah.
And the best comment I ever got, somebody at an evaluation, they said, unbelievable energy, fantastic presentation. And they said, if you pause more, the silence would be deafening.
It's true.
And I've never forgot that. I mean, sometimes you just have to ask the question. Like, right now, we're in the middle of, we're taping this the 24th of March, and we're in the middle of the coronavirus.
Yeah.
And a great question to ask people is, you know, we're going to be through this. America's going to be fine. We're going to get out of this. Hopefully it's going to be weeks and it's not going to be months. But a good question to ask yourself is, when this is over, what is your memory going to be? Is it going to be, hey, man, I maximized my time that month or 4 weeks or whatever it was I had off? Or you look back and regret and say, I wasted so much time. My philosophy of getting switched on, what it's about is long-term sustained success, getting yourself switched on. Sure. So you can switch other people on.
Yep.
And what I talk about is you got to take care of your number one asset. I mean, this is the best time right now to really work on yourself, physically, emotionally, mentally, just getting yourself great. So when you come out of it, because we're going to go into recovery, you want to hit the ground running. You want to take advantage of that.
Yeah, because the top people are they're doing that right now. So if you're not doing that, you're going to be left behind in your industry. I don't care what you're selling or what you're doing. Now, I wanted to ask you this. Can we discuss the difference between presentation and persuasion? I wanted to ask you that.
Well, I think, as you'd probably agree, most salespeople are presenters. Mm-hmm. You know, there's very few professionals who really make it a science and study. Jim Rohn taught me a long time ago. Jim Rohn, for those of you who don't know, is R-O-H-N. He was Tony Robbins' mentor. I've listened to him more than anybody the last 30 years. He said, you know, money is an exchange of value. Mm-hmm. Most people would say money is an exchange of time because they're thinking, how much are you going to pay me per hour, week, month, year? Mm-hmm. But nothing wrong with making massive amounts of money as long as you give massive amounts of value.
Yep.
The way to give massive amounts of value is to consistently become more valuable. Mm-hmm. So you have to study. I call it the 4% solution. 4% of 24 hours is 1 hour a day.
Right.
So you have to sharpen your axe at least 1 hour a day. Yeah. Listening to a podcast like this. I mean, that's the amazing thing about the people listening. It's always the winners who listen to something like this. It's not the failures who are listening to this podcast. It's the people who are already doing well thinking, how can I get a little bit better? So you're thinking, how can I take that 4% of my day, listen to a podcast a day, reading 15, 20 minutes a night? It's that repeated exposure to that good stuff makes you a persuader. And I've got some ideas I think that'll help people make a better persuader here. But how can you really persuade people to action? My goal in what I do is when I speak for a company, when I open and close their convention, I want to make the person who found me look like a hero.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the hero. I want to be the guide. One of my favorite people, you're probably familiar with Donald Miller.
Sounds familiar.
Building a story brand, where he talks about that. You know, you don't want to be the hero. You want the customer to be the hero. Sure. You just want to be the guide. And that really resonated with me because I think that's what I try to do all those years. Mm-hmm. But when I'm on stage, my whole goal is I was led to be there.
Yeah.
It's not an accident I'm in front of that group. Mm-hmm. Everything in that person's life has led them to my 90 minutes or 2 hours or hour or whatever I have.
Right.
What can I do to persuade them to see a greater possibility for their life? Confront a brutal fact. My presentation is I have them make a decision. And on my business card, it says in there, my decision, live it now. So I pre-frame that up from my presentation about the power of one decision. But I literally have them write out their decision on the card. What do they have to start doing? What do they have to stop doing? What's a committed goal? Could be making President's Club, for example. But then why? What are the habits they're going to do that'll drive that decision? Why do they want to do it? And then I have them go to their phone and pull out their phone 1 week from the day to put that decision in. And then click repeat. So every week they're getting a coaching on their calendar to live that decision. Persuading people is, obviously taking action.
Well, it is, because if you don't learn the right skills to persuade, you are actually hurting your audience. You're hurting your prospects you're talking to, because if you can't learn how to persuade, if you can't learn the right questions to ask to get them to sell themselves or to close themselves, you're not able to solve any of their problems. And their problems still exist. So as you on stage, if you're not able to help them see their problems by certain questions you're asking, then that hour or 2 hours that the company paid you to be there, you're not solving any of their problems, right? So we have to look at persuasion differently. We have to look at, we always talk about this, when we train companies, is we have to learn how to become problem finders and problem solvers. Most salespeople are what? They're what I call product pushers.
Yeah, sure.
That's just the reality of it. Like you said, they just present and just a bunch of facts and features and benefits and hope and pray that something they say is just going to trigger that person to want them to buy. I call that hopium. It's like a drug that so many salespeople or companies are on, that they hope and pray that something they're going to say is going to trigger the person to magically want to purchase from them. And it's such an unpredictable way to make an income as a salesperson or to thrive as a company. So we teach in our day and age, it's not even enough to be problem solvers, because you have to, in 2020, you have to be even better at problem finding. What do I mean by that? That means asking the right questions to your prospect that helps them uncover challenges and problems in their mind that they might not even think they have. Because without helping them uncover their own problems in their mind, it's impossible for them to even purchase from you so you can solve their problems. See where I'm at?
Yeah.
It's a completely night and day difference, your income level, when you start looking at yourself as a problem finder and solver, rather than I'm just trying to make money and sell my product.
Well, the key thing I think you said is it's skill. One of the things I can give access to people, we'll put a link in the show notes. I just did some videos. I'm on retainer for Lennar Homes, probably the largest home builder in the country. And they wanted me to help their division presidents be better speakers, better presenters, because last year's convention, it was not very good. So I went back and I created 6 little videos. And that's one of the key things. Speaking well, for example, on stage, most people say it's their number one fear. They'd rather be in the casket than deliver the eulogy, right? It's a funny line. But it's a skill. Speaking is a skill. Selling is a skill. You've got to sharpen your saw, because when you're really good, for example, what's been the biggest difference for me? I've been in this industry for 25 years. Very, very competitive. It's an easy industry because the barrier to entry is so low.
Right.
And there's a big difference between, for example, somebody who's a sports figure or somebody who's a best-selling author. Just because you can write a book or you're a great quarterback doesn't mean you can get in front of 1,000 people and hold their attention for an hour.
100%.
But it's a learned skill, and you have to get coaching. So I put together those 6 little snippet videos there, how to do that. And it's a matter of skill. And one of my beliefs is, this is the little baby right here. This is my little, okay, now for those people out there who are young, this is called a cassette. That's it's a mini cassette. Is that the cutest thing you've ever seen? There was no digital.
I have not seen one of those.
So this is my original one. When I promoted Tony Robbins, I had to get better, because when I first started, they kind of give us a few leads, that first week or so with auto or real estate. Then we had to self-generate and telemarket everything. And I'll never forget, because I'd never even seen the seminar I was promoting, that first city in Seattle. So I remember first couple presentations, I didn't sell that many tickets. I kept thinking, why are they putting me in front of those groups of losers? Geez, these people are losers. Why aren't they buying tickets? Then I bought this and I started recording my presentation. It takes guts to record yourself. Most salespeople out there have not recorded themselves live in front of a customer. So after I started recording myself and listening to it, I go, geez, I didn't have enough passion there. I didn't ask the right questions. I didn't overcome their objections. I didn't ask them to buy elegantly enough. So once I got in that habit, I believe in getting game film. Every sport, you're getting game film, but you have to watch it. It's like my passion is golf. You go get a lesson and they videotape your swing.
Yeah.
If you don't go back and watch it,
how can you improve?
A lot of value there. So one of the best tips I can give people is go in with your cell phone, ideally video.
Yeah.
Go to your customer and say, you know what, especially if you've worked with them already and you have rapport, said, you know, I'm constantly trying to improve the way I ask questions and listen. And I want to make sure I'm uncovering all your problems today. Instead of me taking such copious notes, would you mind if I just get game film? I want to put my phone on a tripod back there and I want to videotape this.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great idea. I wanted to ask you this question though, because I think this would be on people's minds. What do you think's been the secret for you to thrive in the industry you're in the last 20 years? Because your industry is competitive. I mean, there's not like there's 5 speakers out there. I mean, you're talking about tens of thousands competing.
Oh my God. Yeah. You go to any website,
clients.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Number one, the best marketing is to hit a home run every time. You know, because a lot of my business comes from my speaker bureau partners out there. It's probably 75% of my business. So when you hit a home run, I mean, it gets back to them. But I think, I'd say, Jeremy, documenting my success.
Right.
If you go to my website, getswitchedon.com, anybody can model this. It says success stories. I've got an exhaustive list of clients. Yeah. And I've got written testimonials and video testimonials. I've got over 100 written testimonials. Yeah. And one of the things I've always done to establish the relationship, I pre-frame up front, hey, when I do a fantastic job, if I could, would you? Yeah. And I take a picture of the person who hired me. Sure. Then I get a testimonial quote. What did I do before, during, and after the event to make it special? Yeah. And I put those on my website, and I get the videos on my website. Because what happens is social proof is third party. When people are unsure what to do or what to say, they'll look to what other people have done before them. The seminal book on that, of course, you probably know, Robert Cialdini, Cialdini, Psychology. It's called Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. Yep. So when Tony interviewed him for what was called a Power Talk back in the early 90s, I really tried to study that material. Sure. So as I started my business, I really took that to heart. So I have XYZ bank contact me, or insurance company, or home builder, or whatever it might be. I say, hey, Jeremy, I know this is a competitive thing. You're looking at other speakers. Let me share with you 3 other people just like you who are in your exact situation. We're looking to hire a speaker. Here's what they had to say. Yeah. I can't tell you how influential hearing from other peers is in this business. Most salespeople are too lazy to document their success.
100%. Well, it's overwhelming. So like typically, you know, when you go to a website, you'll see like 3 or 4 testimonials, like from George Q or Amy.
From 6 years ago.
From 7 years ago. What? Yeah, exactly right. And it's just like, really, like on our side, if you go to, the number 7, 7thlevelhq.com, 7thlevelhq.com, we've got posted like 700 written testimonials. So it's like, just like you, it's overwhelming. So when they go through them, it's not like, we know that they're not going to read all of them because there's not enough time. When you scroll through pages after pages after pages, it's like, okay, what this person is talking about might be important. Just like you, when you, as a speaker, if you got 100 some testimonies sitting on there, it's not like they can read every one, but they're going to see like, okay, obviously Chips knows what the heck he's doing. We need to really take this serious. Social proof is very important.
Let me give you a real world example. One of my clients I've worked with a lot over the years is Invisible Fence. They make the products to protect your dog or cat.
I think I think we have it out in our yard.
There you go. And I was talking to their distributors and they didn't have very good testimonials. And I say, what you need to do is get a before testimony of what life, get this before story, what it was like before you had the Invisible Fence, then after the training the dog. But don't just get the testimonial after it was installed. Go back a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, 4 years later, and show those testimonials. Because when you're at home, I did a program for James Hardy, makes the Hardy plank, for the siding of the houses. And I had 400 contractors who do kitchens, window replacements, siding, that kind of thing. And I said, get the before pictures of what it looked like before. Get the pictures during the job, how clean it was. Get the after pictures with you and the entire family standing in front of the house. They showed up on time. They did the job on budget. They cleaned up. Then when you're going into the home, you say, hey, I know there's lots of people you could hire for this job. Let me share with you some of the people who we work with and why they trust us to protect their home. Picture story, picture story, picture story.
Yeah.
Even if you're 25% higher, because usually the other guy comes in and writes something down on a piece of paper and says, I can do it for that.
Yeah, there's no emotion there. So, what you just said is they're focused on their proposals, probably focused on problems that the clients have. And then this is how we solved it. Most proposals or most quotes just focus on, here's our solution, here's our price. But people don't care about that because they see solutions all the time. They want to know that somebody's there can actually solve their problems and get them results. And if they feel like you can solve their problems and get them results, they're going to pay way more than somebody just giving them a cheaper bid and that's it.
Well, it just builds trust and confidence. That's the key. But again, most people are out chasing the next deal.
Yeah, 100%. So I wanted to ask you this. You've spoken at more than 1,000 sales conventions.
God,
that is a lot, man. I don't know, like you should have a lot of air miles by now where you're not playing any first class flight.
I'm just coming up on 3 million just on Delta. Yeah.
Oh
but I've got a friend in the industry. Her name is Jeannie Robertson. If people look her up, she's 76 years old. She was Miss North Carolina. She's 6'2". She's one of the greatest storytellers ever. I flew with her last year. She has 7 million.
Wow. She is just a traveling machine.
Oh my God.
What are some of the most common mistakes that you see salespeople make right now in our time? What do you think is most common?
Oh, where did my head go to? I'd say number one, especially right now, you want to be a resource for your customers. I mean, what can you do to help? Number one, right now it's tough. What I would do, because my business is different. Mine is more of a one-off. I get the occasional big companies like Lennar that hires me through time, but if I had a customer base, I'd certainly figure out who are my top 10. It's Pareto principle, 80-20. I would make sure I was focusing on that top 20%. I would reach out. How can I support you? How can I help you? If you have a sales relationship, how can I do additional training? Who's not working out there? What can you do right now to build that relationship? Yeah. I'm a big believer in the power of handwritten cards. I would be writing out little handwritten cards, let them know you're thinking about them, building positively. There's so much negativity out there. You want to be a beacon for light for them.
Yeah.
So building those relationships, number one. Once we come out of this, I think this is a great opportunity for people. Sure. It's going to depend. My kids are older. Yeah. I've got one 15-year-old at home right now, but we actually homeschooling him, so he's online. But it's different. There's people out there right now who've got 2 or 3 young kids at home. You got to block out some time. When you're going to work. When you're going to play. Yeah. Figure out what you need to do. Attack your day. Dress for your day. Don't show up down there in underwear and a T-shirt. If you're working today, get your workout in the morning. Have a green-based drink. Get your energy level up and get really, really clear what you want to accomplish. In general, right now is an opportunity for you to work on yourself because we're going to come out of this. You want to say, hey, what did I do right now to set myself up for recovery? Yeah. In general, I think people aren't getting game film.
Sure.
When I talk about that in my presentations, very few people have ever recorded themselves. They think that I'm above that. And you're going to do it poorly until you do it well. You'll get it better and better and better. I would be mentoring right now with some of the other best salespeople. If I'm not a top performer right now, I'd be reaching out to the top 2 or 3 people on the sales force in my company. Hey, what are you doing?
100%.
What are your best practices right now? I would find out. I would get a mentor.
100%.
Listening to a podcast today, reading every single day, finding and doing some research on your industry. I mean, slow down and look when we come out of this. Like I'm creating right now, my talk has got to change.
Sure.
How are we going to adapt coming out of this recovery?
Yeah, everybody's going to have to adapt if you're going to be at the top. And I think one of the biggest challenges I see, and this is not just with the coronavirus that stuff's going on, this is just sales in general, is that most salespeople are still using old school sales techniques from the dinosaur ages of sale that work against human behavior. What do I mean by work against human behavior? Well, there's certain things you say in a presentation, or there's certain questions you ask that actually trigger what's called sales resistance from your prospects. And when you trigger sales resistance, they do what? They put up the wall. Right? And they do one of 2 things. They either reject what you're offering and throw out objections and totally turn you down. That's usually an A-type personality. Or if they're more a passive personality, they withdraw from you. and they say, well, that sounds really good. Leave me some information. Can you call me back in a week, a month, a year later? And then when you call them back, they go into witness protection mode and you never hear from them again. So because of those skills that most salespeople still use, and I don't blame them, because I think most salespeople just don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know, right? Mm-hmm. We talk about in our sales training, really there's 3 eras of your prospects, and there are 3 eras of selling. Era number 1, that's back from like the 50s, 60s, 70s. I would even say 80s, which is still mainly taught today by most sales trainers. And that's more like boiler room selling, like Wolf on Wall Street, manipulate them, push them, pressure them, pound it into the sand. Buyers are liars, always be closing. Be so excited about what you sell that somehow they're going to.
He hasn't changed, by the way. It was 4 years ago. We were down in Australia for it's called ERIC. It's the largest real estate continuing education, like 3,500 people. And I opened each day and he was each afternoon. Yeah. And he just hasn't changed. I mean, it was just like, okay, it's a $2,000 product. I never do this, and I'm going to sell it for $900 today. All this stuff.
It's boiler, it's boiler room selling, right? Because that's how they learned how to sell. That's era number 1. Yeah. Era number 2 is more consultative selling, right? We came out in the 80s and 90s where you were taught, hey, you need to ask some questions, magical, like revolutionary. You need to ask some questions, ask logical-based questions to find out what your prospects' problems are. But here's the problem. When you only ask logical-based questions, what type of answers is your prospect going to give back?
Logical. Yeah, get some emotion. Yeah. Exactly.
And do people buy on logic or emotion? They buy on emotion, right? So when you ask questions, I wrote this down like, oh, Mr. Prospect, what's keeping you up at night? Have they heard that 1,000 times? Right. What are they going to say? Oh, well, boy, Chip, what's keeping me up at night is this. No, they shut down because they know it's like a manipulative sales question, right? So it's better than the era 1 of manipulating them and pressuring them, but you're still having to play the numbers game because very little emotion is brought out by simply asking logical-based questions. And now we're in era number 3. So you're more persuasive, and I know you know this because you worked with Tony. You're more persuasive when you allow others to persuade themselves. That's called dialogue. You mentioned earlier, Socratic dialogue. We called a concept called NEPQ, and that stands for.
Yeah, I saw a video you did on it. Very good.
Neuro-emotional persuasion questioning. And the question is, how do you do that? Can you just show up and say, hey, John, just persuade yourself and give me a check? No, you have to learn specific skilled questions. And I know you've got this down. Tony's got this down. I've seen him at events. And you have to know when and how to ask them, the right tonality, the right pausing.
That's why game film is so crucial, because it's not what you say. It's how you say it. That's what's so essential.
Yeah. That trigger them to want to change their situation. So it's all about self-persuasion. But the problem is that salespeople are still using era 1 and era 2 skills to sell to an era 3 prospect. Sure. Our prospects have moved on. And if you're still selling and using those old school techniques, but your prospects in era 3, you just get turned down most of the time, or you get commoditized and it's all about price. And that's it. The ball game's completely changed. So we're living through some difficult times right now. We talked about the coronavirus. All right. What do you think? You've given some advice. I want to get maybe your thoughts on one other thing, but what do you think is the biggest piece of advice you could get for salespeople right now while they might be at home, not as busy, just for the next 2 to 4 weeks? Like, what's the biggest thing they can do?
Well, again, I think, you are your number 1 asset, taking great care of yourself. If you're not in peak shape right now, you can take the next month and get in fantastic shape. It's one of my favorite lines from Jim Rohn used to say, how much overweight should you be at 50? That's a good line. Probably not much, right? Yeah. I've rarely seen a peak performer who smokes, for example. There just aren't many. If you're still smoking or dipping, you may want to Google that. They have pretty much conclusively proved it'll kill you prematurely. It's a filthy, disgusting habit. It's 2020. It's time to quit. Yeah. All the information about smoking, and somehow you go, I think it's still a good long-term decision to keep smoking. Not good, right? So I think it's working on yourself. And I mean, getting it for the next 3-4 weeks, you got to have a plan for every day.
Yeah.
Do the little things. You know, I love Admiral McRaven. If you haven't seen it, look up the Make the Bed commencement. He says they teach in the military, first thing, make your bed, make it perfectly, get up, one right thing leads to the next right thing.
Yeah.
Get up, get your exercise, have your plan for the day, reach out to your customers. I think where most salespeople aren't doing as well as they could, I would say getting game film, documenting their success, and leveraging referrals and being referable. Number one, you got to be great to be referable, but doing the little things to thank people. For example, in my business, if somebody refers me, I find out something personal. I mean, I've got a pretty big fee. If somebody refers me out of the blue, I might spend $500, for example, and do something special for them that's personal for them. It could be $50 or $100, but find out how you can look at your process. This is probably a good time to look. I like that before, during, and after. So before you do business with somebody, what are you doing to prepare?
100%.
During the process, what are you doing? After the process, break it down, get it on a spreadsheet, brainstorm with some of your peers and say, how can we be better? When we come out of this, we need to systematize this. Edwards Deming, after World War II, he was the guy who went to Japan, helped re-engineer their economy. He said, if you can't describe what you're doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing.
Exactly.
So you have to look at that process and say, how can you get a little bit better? Because the problem is, if you don't analyze it periodically, you're going to make the same mistakes over and over and over.
100%.
So you're going to look back when we're out of this. And again, this is a good question. What will I look back and say, I wish I would have done?
Exactly.
I wish I would have accomplished that.
Exactly.
You know, I love Jim. I'm quoting Jim Rohn a lot because it's so ingrained in my nervous system. But he says, you know, we're all going to suffer one of two pains. The pain of regret or the pain of discipline. Discipline weighs ounces and regret is going to weigh tons.
Yeah. Especially as you get older, 100%. And, you know, you listen to that podcast that Brad Lee and I did with Dropping the Bombs. And one of the biggest things we talked about is for salespeople and business owners, if you've got salespeople, what are you having them do right now? Like, is training something you did, or is training something that you do, right? There's a massive difference in your company's success or your success as a sales professional is if you've trained in the past and you think you've got it all down and you know everything you know how to do. You think you just don't need any new training. That comes from your ego, right? And I've been there before. You know, a long time ago, I was making a lot of money as a salesperson, thought I knew everything. And I noticed that over that next year, my income just kind of stayed the same and never really improved until I humbled myself and realized I don't know everything. There's always something that I can learn. So you have to look at yourself as you're a professional listening to this, or you're a business owner. What are you having your salespeople do right now? Are they just sitting around sucking their thumb, you know, waiting to start again, watching Netflix all day? Or they dived into content? Or they dived into training? Are they learning the right questions to ask to their prospects? So when all this comes back around in the next 30 or 45 days or whatever, they're prepared and they hit the ground running. Successful salespeople are just like successful athletes. So is LeBron James, is he just done training? What do you think he's doing right now? He's training every day. Tiger Woods with golf, he's training. He's not just sitting around for months on end doing nothing. You know, top business owners, they're training. And those companies who are training right now with their downtime are going to be the companies that thrive when all the lights come back on here in the next, few weeks. 100%. Okay. So I wanted to ask you this. How do you think salespeople, and you kind of touched about this already, but how do you think salespeople can stand out in the market? How can they separate themselves from other salespeople they're competing with?
Well, I think that's the crux of my get switched on message. I mean, some people are switched on, they have great energy. Here's a test. Go listen to your voicemail message you have on your phone. Is it boilerplate or does it have how many times do you call a company and you go, how do they let that person answer the phone? That initial reaction is crucial. So standing out right now in the current market, you can stand out by being magic, being possibility, being optimism. That's the kind of energy that we need right now to get out of this. It's so easy to focus on what's not working, what you can't do. In this situation, it's almost cliche, but you can't focus on your uncontrollables. You got to focus on what you can control. Number one is your attitude. Your attitude is contagious. What's your attitude? How do you form that attitude? We talked about that 4% solution. What are you watching? What are you listening to? What are you reading? Who are you hanging around? I would be very careful of focusing and having the news on in the background. Turn that shit off. Don't listen to that all day long. You're better than that. So you can stand out right now from being a beacon of possibility for people, and just deepening those relationships. Again, if I was in sales, especially when you have ongoing relationships with people, I would be spending a lot of time focusing on my top 20% and cultivating those relationships and standing out. When people come out of this, they trust you, they like you, because you weren't trying to sell them over these 3, 4, 5 weeks or whatever the hell it's going to be. Hopefully it's not more than that. They're going to look back and say, hey, you were a resource. You helped me. You added value. You reached out to me when I needed it. So I think that's what I would do.
Well, they look at you as the trusted authority. You know, most prospects look at salespeople as someone who's just there trying to stuff their solution down their throat. So they try to get rid of you. You commoditize. They don't see you any different than other salespeople calling from any company trying to sell them anything. So once you learn how to ask the right questions and you learn the right listening skills, we'll talk about that in a second because I'm going to ask you about that. You become what I call a trusted, not just a trusted advisor, but the trusted authority. There's a difference between being an advisor and the authority in your market. Because when they look at you as the authority, when competing companies come around for their business, maybe with lower prices or better deals, they're not going to switch because they already have so much emotional buy-in to you and you solving their problems that it would almost be on their deathbed. Like they just couldn't switch over to somebody else. You only are able to do that by mastering the art of effective questioning and, more importantly, effective listening, 100%. So what do you think on that topic, what do you think the role of trust is in the sales process? Like you're on stage, right? So you might be presenting to 1,000 people, 2,000, 500, whatever it is. There's a lot of people. That's not even just one-on-one. What's the role of trust in that sales process? How do you get your audience to buy into your message?
Oh, that's a good question. I think number one, if people wouldn't book me unless they trusted me, I think you have to, again, have a record of success, be able to document that. And people know, how do I say this without getting in trouble? You can tell when a speaker phones it in. Sure. You can tell. You have to get buy-in. I think you build trust by going the extra mile. Within my presentations, I'm always interviewing. You know, I do a lot of sales and marketing conventions. That's probably 70% of what I speak at. Right. So when I interview their top 3, 4 people, when I'm quoting them on stage, when I'm talking about a particular big win they had or a problem they have or something's wrong with the SAS implementation or whatever it was, you get buy-in and trust because people know right away, especially seasoned salespeople. Sure. They've been around the block a little bit. They know when that person's done their homework. That's when you get people really to listen because they know you've gone the extra mile. Yeah. They say, he gets it. He understands who I am, what I'm going through. I think that for my business, that's the number one way I can build trust. Yeah. So you're getting buy-in. How does science, and I know you're big on this, especially with working with Tony over the years, but how does science play a role in effective selling and effective persuasion? Well, where my mind goes to is Robert Cialdini's book, Influence. If you haven't read that, you're in sales. Good book. You got to read that book. So that really is the systematic way, or what are the tools of persuasion in terms of reciprocity, in terms of building commitment and consistency, social proof, the liking principle, credibility principle, using the law of contrast, for example. There is a lot of science to it. The old days, because it's interesting. I'll go into some companies where you got some high tenure on some salespeople. Yeah. And it's still a good old boy network. Sure. And that's still how they operate. But I mean, things are changing. I mean, the best investment I made, I think, was back. I got hired by Janssen, graduated from Oregon in 1983. Yeah. Saw an ad for Tom Hopkins, How to Master the Art of Selling Anything and the Official Guide to Success. I think it was $279. Yeah. Old school, but what it did for me is I listened to those cassettes over and over and over, and I had some big territories. I had Idaho, Montana, my God. Sure. So it did 2 things for me. It gave me a basics in the skills of selling and success, but it taught me if I invest. Most people, I mean, they'll go look at a book. I just picked up a book from Anthony, for example. Eat Their Lunch is a good book. And some people look at that and go, gosh, $24. Nah. I have a frame of reference now. When I invest money, it's like, I'm going to try to get a 10 or 100-fold return.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's probably the good thing of the people watching this. You know, that's why I know you've got a new book coming out in the fall, kind of based on that whole, is it NEBQ? That whole piece.
Yeah. It's already really written. You know, it's actually right here. We just haven't published it yet. I mean, this is
there you go.
This is one of our manuals. I mean, that's like 300 some pages.
Right.
Yeah. Just haven't
published. But it's the mindset of the person who knows that they can get better. And when you're really, really good at what you do, like most people watching this, especially this long, I don't know how long we've been going. Hopefully seems like pretty quick.
Yeah.
You're looking for a nugget. You're looking for something for some people, oh my God, Gainfield, I haven't taped myself in a year.
Yeah.
Some people never tape themselves, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just the value of understanding that what you do is a skill. There is a science behind it, and it takes practice. This is probably one of the best books I've read in the last 5 years, is Peak by Erickson and Poole, talking about how peak performers get better, from chess to violins to doctors to salespeople.
Yeah.
And most training is around specifically what to do. It's you got to train on how to do stuff.
Yeah.
There's a difference between what to do and how to do it. And for example, that book lays it out really well.
Well, and it's true. You know, I read a lot of sales books, and most of it's just really about theory. You know, it's a professor talking about theory, and that's great. But when I go into companies, you know, the first thing I hear from most companies when I come in and do like a live training is they're like, wow, we had this great sales trainer here, you know, a couple of weeks ago, and they got us really fired up and pumped up and motivated. But then we got on the phones and we're like, what do we ask? What do we say?
Yeah.
You know, because there's not much out there. So,
well, you're brilliant. You've got that whole VT virtual world you can plug people into. That's brilliant.
More about the tactical, like how do you do it? Not just like what it is, but now tell me how to do it. Like, what questions do I need to ask? What order that's going to get me this result? And when you have that, that's what's in this book. That's when it's in our virtual training platform. That's when salespeople get results, right? That's where their income goes to. Maybe they're making $5 or $6 grand a month, and now they're making 20 grand a month or 25 grand a month, selling the same thing, you know, as a W-2 salesperson, or even higher. That's when companies' numbers like double and quadruple, not because they're just motivated, because motivation wears off. You know, you can get pumped up to make cold calls and call your leads, but if you don't know exactly what to say, more importantly, exactly what to ask, that's going to trigger that person to want to engage with you, to want you to help solve their problems, then motivation wears off pretty damn quick when you're getting rejected all the time. You know, 100%.
But it's a constant piece. You know, that's why you can't, you know, it's like Zig Ziglar used to say, you know, you don't take a shower once a month. Yeah. You got to consistently immerse yourself. It's the law of association, the good stuff you're reading, listening to, et cetera. But, you know, from a training standpoint, I think what happens, because I believe competence happens in a moment. And you're training somebody who used to do things this way. Yeah. Now they do things this way, and they're a little questioning it. They do a little bit. I talk about anything worth doing well is worth doing poorly, because you're going to struggle. You have a beginner's mindset. It doesn't work. Then finally you stick with it. And then you ask those questions and you say it that way, and the customer says yes. You're like, damn, this works. So it's like a light bulb switches on. In a moment, you go, I can do this. Yeah. But people need the pushing and the training and the hand holding to get them to that moment.
100%. And it's all, you know, science is so important. I think, you know, and I knew this early on, like when I was, you know, my major was behavioral science and human psychology. So I was learning about how science plays a massive role. It is how people make decisions to buy or not to buy, right? And I think most salespeople don't understand that every prospect that you're talking to more than likely has problems and challenges, but most of them bury them in their subconscious mind. They're there, right? You have to act like a gold digger. And I say that in a good way, but you have to act like a problem finder. And your questions that you ask, if you've got those right, those trigger that person's subconscious to kind of release those problems and challenges into their conscious mind. And when they're released into their conscious mind, they become urgent. They become like, oh crap, what if this does happen? I'm not prepared. I need to do something now. It builds urgency in the sale, compared to most salespeople ask a few surface questions and then go into their pitch. And those emotions, those problems and challenges stay buried in the prospect's subconscious and they never move. Science is so important in selling if you want to be a top performer. Now, I wanted to ask you this last question because I know you've got other appointments here. What are your thoughts on this? Are people born with high-level sales skills and persuasion skills? Are they just born out of your mother's womb, like being able to persuade? Or is it an acquired skill?
No, I think 100% it's a learned skill. I mean, there are people predisposed based on who their parents were and how they grew up and what mom did, what dad did that might presuppose. I mean, most people's 4-year-old's the best salesperson on the planet, right? They just know it's not, they don't care. They ask more questions. Questions just wear you down. That's the old school selling, obviously. No, but it's definitely a skill. I mean, I think probably the best skill, if you're a salesperson, is to be able to, I agree with asking questions, but you got to be able to tell a good story. Mm-hmm. And you have to document your story and do case studies of problems of people just like them. Mm-hmm. We went into a company and we found out X and they had XYZ problem. We analyzed it, actually realized it was costing them this. Mm-hmm. We were able to help put this solution in and here's the end result. So most people aren't getting those stories, the right story. Yeah. Very, very, very persuasive. Similar situation. I mean, that's an old school Tom Hopkins that really works. Similar situation where you sell people just like them. We're in this situation. If you can document it successfully, find out the problem, find out the pain, build the emotion around it. What was the rosy picture after you implemented that solution? This is a good time right now in downtime to get those stories.
Oh, 100%. And I think salespeople, there's this myth out there that if you have the gift of the gab, that you're going to be great at sales. Here's the challenge with that. You know, when I, in my 20s and early 30s and stuff, when I was in my sales career, training sales teams, those type of things, people who talked the most sold the least. I mean, they were their bottom performers. Talking too much, giving information like that, features and benefits, gab. Maybe that was true 30, 40 years ago. But in our day and age, people don't want to be manipulated and sold to. They want to be asked and understood.
That's why you got to get game film, because so many people, especially the longer they've done something, the more they know. Yeah. And sometimes you're not really listening. You're just waiting for your chance to jump in and share something brilliant. So getting that game film for some people is like a brick upside the head because you don't know you're doing it. You're talking so much. You're talking yourself out of sales and not listening and asking questions.
Of course.
But the thing with game film is when I train speakers, for example, I'll videotape and coach people. I could tell you you're doing X, but until you see it, your brain doesn't connect with it.
100%. And here's the reason why selling is a learned skill. Everybody listening to me right now, can you learn questions? Yes. Can you learn how to listen? Yeah, I think so. So if selling is all about listening for really what's under the surface of what's going on in that person and their life and their company and the problems, and it's learning, asking questions, well, then it's a learned skill. You're not born out of your mother's womb knowing what questions.
Hey, we got another salesperson here. Look at that.
Oh, another salesperson, doctor. We're so happy. So the myth is just completely gone. Stop being a gabber. Stop being a talker, and become an effective listener and question asker, or become a problem finder, become a problem solver. Chip, that was really good, and I really enjoyed that because right now with all this stuff's going on, people listening to this podcast, they're looking for answers like, hey, what am I doing right now in this time? So thanks so much. And what I want to do, can you tell our listeners how they can learn more about you and the programs you offer? How do they find out more about Chip?
Sure. My website is getswitchedon.com. If you go to YouTube, my YouTube channel, I probably got 40 little snackable content, tips on everything from parenting to marriage to life to sales, health, etc. Yeah. What I mostly do is I open or close conventions. And if you had a convention last year recently and it sucked, share my information with your meeting planner because I'll come in and light everybody up, give them a great program. Yeah. And there'll be a link in the show notes on my website, getswitchedon.com. There's a meeting planner tab. It says training videos. I just put up those 6 new training videos last week.
Perfect.
To help anybody be a better presenter. It's all free.
Yeah. And I want everybody listening today to go to getswitchedon.com, and watch those videos, because Chip, those videos are there for you, for anybody to really help you right now. You know, when we're going through this time, which we're all going through this together, but we will persevere no matter what country you live in, whatever you sell, whatever your company is, it doesn't matter your products or services. We will all persevere from this, and we will all, I think, rebound from this even better than when we came in to this dilemma.
There you go.
So, Chip, pleasure. Thanks for being on here. Remember, if you are still using old school closing techniques from the dinosaur ages of selling, and you're still out trying to manipulate and just sell to make money, remember, you are losing sales that you should and could be making for not only you, but for your company you represent, for your family, and for future generations that are coming after you. So learn the right skills to persuade effectively. Chip, thanks so much for being on here. We wish you the best, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Now, if you're serious about joining the top 1%, I mean the top 1%, and you want to experience more training content just like this, click the links right over there. Right over there, they're exactly what you need to see next. You see, I release new episodes featuring top salespeople and sales authorities, multiple 6-figure, high 6-figure, even 7-figure earners every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday every single week at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you're new here, do yourself a favor and smash that subscribe button right below, and join our new Facebook group, Sales Revolution. You see, it's free, and there's a link in the description below just for you. We put it there for you. Finally, I make posts on Facebook and Instagram each and every day with more tips and training, so be sure and follow me and turn on your notifications. So make a comment in the first 7 minutes to any of my latest posts, share this episode, and there's a very real chance that you're going to win some killer prizes. And here's the thing, don't sit on the sidelines. Don't be like everyone else. Get into the game. Join the sales revolution. Stay active, get involved, learn the right skills, and we will show you how to take your life and income to a level that most only dream about. Stay safe. Talk to you soon.